Hello my friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Severiano Paoli and we're gonna talk about the double bass. Today I'm starting a series of videos that I've been wanting to make already for a while, but because of circumstances couldn't find the time or couldn't find the right ideas to put into them. But now I have them. The series of videos will be about the history of something really relevant for us bass players, which is the bow. We're gonna look into the development of the bow throughout the ages and to see how and why it's been developed in a determined way, and to see what the differences are and what the applications are in our nowadays performance practice. And since we have to start, let's start from the beginning, from the Renaissance. Although both string instruments existed already a long time before the Renaissance, iconography tracks them back to the ancient Greece and even earlier. We will start talking about the development of the bass bow since the Renaissance, since it's then that the grandparents of our beloved elephant start to exist and come into fashion. So let's imagine to be in Florence or in Naples in the 16th century. One of the instruments that we might see, we might hear played in courts, is something looking like this. Ha! And you might ask, what's that thing? Well, this is a violone. It doesn't look so much like a double bass, although it resembles it, but it's one, let's say, of the grandparents of it. What's this instrument in fact? It's a low, let's say, a low member of the viola da gamba family. It's an instrument that goes from the 8-foot register, so from the low register of the viola da gamba, which is what we call normally viola da gamba, is actually the bass viol. Anyway, it goes from that register, but it got also pretty low, so it goes down to the 8-foot. As a matter of fact, this has 5 strings, it goes down to the C. It could also have a 6th. I've actually removed it because I like this more like this, but it can have a 6th one. So go to a low G, so 2 octaves lower than this. What? An instrument like this is what would have been used a lot to accompany singers or accompany solo instruments, to play the basso continuo, which in the end of the 16th century starts to exist and come into fashion, and also as a solo instrument. Of course, this is not a guitar. You can't strum it, but there are better ways to use them. And it's an instrument that you need to bow. And the sort of bow that you might have seen used by violone players back then is something like this. So, here's a Renaissance viol bow. How about it? First of all, what you can see is that it has a pretty straightforward design, pretty simple. The stick is pretty much straight, with a slight outwards, with a slight convex curve. I don't know how visible it is. The tip is not particularly elaborate. Anyway, the wool bow is not particularly elaborate in design. It has a fixed frog, which means there's no adjuster for the hair tension, and the hair then starts directly from the stick rather than from the frog as we use on modern bows. I'm gonna show you. You see? And yeah, I can just put the frog back here. In case I need more tension, and on damp days that's pretty much needed, I will just add a little bit of leather or a little bit of paper here behind the frog, just to hold just to give more tension to the hair. This kind of bow was held with what we call the gamba grip, which is an underhand hold like that. I'm not gonna go into detail about it now, probably make another video about it, but what's important to know is that this is a grip with which you don't give so much power, let's say you can't push so much a string, which is anyway not needed on such an instrument. As you can see, the strings are not very thick, but it's fantastic for what concerns agility and ease of string crossing, which on an instrument with many strings is definitely an advantage. Keep in mind, this one has 5 strings, but there are with 6 and even with 7, so you can imagine you're moving really in a narrow space. I'll show you. You see that with the string clearance which isn't that large, having something that allows you to move easily between them without having to worry the whole time about whether you will hit more strings at the time is definitely advantageous. So far, so good. We've got a nice instrument, we've got lovely bow, a perfect adapt grip to use it that allows us to play our bass lines very well. It doesn't give all that power, but we don't need so much because strings are thin. So everybody's happy, yay! No, it didn't go like that. With the development of music from the end of the Renaissance, especially with the beginning of the Baroque era, composers started to use more and more the 16th foot, which is literally an octave lower than the register this instrument is. The violone kind of, explores the 16th foot register, but you need a larger instrument in order to make those low rumbling bass notes come out. That's physics. Obviously, stringed instruments that could play in the 16-foot register did exist. There is, for example, a larger version of the G violone, which is called the D violone, which plays a fourth lower. If you read Pretorius' treatise there, he also indicates other instruments in that register. But the point is, what was changing was not only the use of the 16th foot, but also the aesthetics of the sound, the sort of sound quality, the sound characteristics that were sought after. We started to have a problem, and the problem came out when this instrument started being replaced by something like this. In order to have a proper 16-foot sound, have proper 16-foot notes, you need a larger instrument. You need thicker strings and longer and thicker strings, which of course have more tension. And in order to make this string sound, you need more power. This sort of bow with this sort of grip were not enough anymore. I'll show you. Although it might still sound nice, it's not even close to the power, to the definition, to the punch that we need with a 16-foot instrument, with a double bass, with a contrabass. So, new instrument, new era, needed a new bow. And it's time to introduce the Baroque bow. Baroque bows come in plenty of shapes and fashions. I'm going to show you some of the ones I own. Not all of them are for double bass, but you can have an idea of how they look like. The first one, as you can see, is a very simple one. We could consider it as a sort of transition bow between the Renaissance and the Baroque. As you see, it has a frog, still a fixed frog, but of the sort that we can call a German frog. The stick is obviously thicker, there's more hair than on the other one. The tip is slightly more elaborate. As we go down on these two bows that are actually for viol, but we can see something that is quite typical of Baroque bows. That is, let me see if I can focus on it well, yeah, which is a more elaborate tip. These are still not particularly fancy, but you can find amazing ones, really. Down to the last one, which is late Baroque bass bow. So you can see the first is pretty much an early design, and the last is a later one. Still here, very nice tip, well worked. It's less curved. The tendency was throughout the 18th century was to make bows less and less curved. When we'll make the episode about the classical bow, you'll see that sticks in that period became pretty much straight. Something to focus on: the first bow, the earliest one, still has a fixed frog, whereas the late one already has a screw. That's perfectly historical, because in the 18th century the screw system was invented and was and started to be applied to bows. Many sorts of wood were used to build Baroque and Renaissance bows. Just to make an example, beech was widely used, or cherry. But now let's take a look at something very important. How do they sound? How are they supposed to sound? Let's check it out. As I mentioned before, the gamba grip was not enough anymore on such thick strings, on such a massive instrument. And with such a bow, it wouldn't work either, because the bow is much larger, it's heavier, and this sort of hold isn't really comfortable at all. Also, we don't need anymore this sort of grip, because we have a larger instrument, there's more string clearance, more spacing. We don't have that problem anymore. Also, strings are fewer. Now, it's a coincidence that my G violone has 5 strings and this bass has 5 strings, but keep in mind, there were instruments with 6 or 7 strings back then. So, and that's my theory, but I think it came pretty naturally. People switched from this grip slowly towards this. As you see, it's still underhand, but instead of being kind of lateral, like this is, it's now on top. You're now on top of the bow. And this gives I should tune the bass once in a while. And anyway, this gives you a lot of ease with putting the weight of your body and giving the momentum the strings need in order to get in motion and sound. But now let's get into the musical characteristics of Baroque playing and of the Baroque bow. So, what does a Baroque bow do? What's special with it? So, we have to reconnect this with how Baroque music is supposed to be played, to the important aspects of Baroque bass playing. One of them, which is fundamental, is that clarity is as important, if not more important, than power. You do need a big sound in Baroque music, but this sound needs to be functional, needs to be clear, needs to be supportive of the other lines in the music. You want to add color, you want to add power, you want to add support, but you don't want everything to become muddy. So that's why clarity in sound and clarity in articulation is fundamental. In this sense, the Baroque bow helps us. Its physical characteristics enhance the clarity of playing. The outwards convex curve of Baroque bows, which can go from a pretty arched design as this, for example, or even much more than this, down to an almost straight yet slightly convex one, like this later model, gives the bows an interesting and very useful characteristic for this kind of music. It gives them the capability to give very clear articulation, as I mentioned before, but also the ability to play very short with a sort of a clicky attack and effect, and with a lot of resonance, without grabbing the string too much. On the other hand, if you really need to play very long, intense lines with sustained sound, of course it's possible with a Baroque bow, but that wouldn't be the ideal one. That's why also in history bows have then inverted their the curve, gone towards what is the modern design. That's gone together with the evolution of music, but we'll talk about this in another video. Another important characteristic of Baroque playing is what we could call the speech-like phrasing. What's that? Let me make you an example. When we talk, we do not stress all the words in the same way, right? I mean, there are some words to which we give more weight, some to which we give less. Otherwise, we would start talking like this, and they would sound very boring. Hi Dave, my name is Hal. Ridiculous, right? Now, the natural way of stressing that we have in speech needs to be translated to the instrument. How do we achieve that? Baroque bows help a lot in this sense. Let me tell you how. The physical characteristics of the Baroque bow help us a lot with reaching this sort of speech-like quality in our playing. Why? The Baroque bow naturally has this characteristic. Its down bow is strong, up bow is weak. So the two bows don't sound even by themselves. You've got to control them in order to make them even. It's obviously possible, but you need control. But if you follow the natural tendency of the bow, it's just going to work like that. This is an extremely powerful tool we have to shape our phrases, to give them that sort of movement they need. Let me play you an example. Let's take a simple bass line, such as now I'm going to play it very evenly. I mean, boring. Now, of course, this is not well played. It's static, all notes are even, so it doesn't work, it doesn't give you that groovy, that swinging feeling. And also, you have no idea how much you have to control the bow in order to have such a bad result, It's really going against the nature of this thing. Now, let me just play by letting the bow do its course, let's say. So, my friends, we're at the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. I enjoyed it a lot. As I said at the beginning, I had been waiting a long time to do it. In the next episode, we're going to talk about what came next, which is the classical bow. So, I'm looking forward to shoot it and for you to see it. If you have comments, if you liked it, if you didn't like this video, if you have things to add or to discuss about, please write it down in the comments and I'll be very happy to reply and to learn from you. If you have any question, you can contact me through YouTube or my Facebook page or through my website. Feel free to do it anytime. Thank you so much, my friend, and see you in the next video. Ciao!